Are you looking for a gimbal for your DSLR or mirrorless camera? Are you doing some research before you drop maybe $350 to $700? Well, today I have a gimbal for you. It's from Feiyutech. It's the Feiyutech AK2000s. And we're gonna review this gimbal next. Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Brian, the Camera Guy. On my channel, I review Sony cameras and accessories that help make that filmmaking process even easier. If that's something that you're into, make sure you hit that subscribe button and that bell notification so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. All right, so today I have the Feiyutech AK2000s 3-axis gimbal stabilizer. I've been using this thing now for about a month, and I can tell you it does a really great job of stabilizing your footage. Now, I pair it up with my Sony a6400, but I've also thrown on here a Sony a7 III, and I can tell you it's done a really great job smoothing out that footage. Now, this gimbal does come with a quick release plate, and it does have tripod feet, so you can definitely set this thing down and feel confident that you're not gonna have your camera tipping over. It is a 3-axis gimbal, which basically means that it has 3 axes that will help balance your footage. I can tell you that it does have 3 locking mechanisms as well. So as you balance this thing, it's gonna be quite easy to balance it because you're gonna be able to lock off those axes that are not currently being adjusted. It did take me a little bit of time to first set up this gimbal, but once I got the hang of it, I was able to get it down pretty well. Now, the only downside is I use the Sony a6400, and that lens is not completely center inside the camera body. So what I find is that sometimes that grip does rub a little bit on the side here. So you gotta make sure that you balance the thing just right and it gives you just enough clearance here for that a6400. So let's say you decided to go with the a6400 versus the a6600, and the a6600 does have some image stabilization in it, but it's not the greatest. Don't get me wrong, it's not the greatest. But the a6400 has no in-body stabilization. So if you're gonna look to get some smooth footage, you're gonna wanna get yourself a gimbal like this. Now this gimbal comes in around $350, and I do wanna thank my friends over at Feiyutech for sending this gimbal out to me to review for you today. Now, even though they sent this thing out to me, I do have full control over what I say, and my review is my opinion and my opinion alone. I was not paid or sponsored to say anything positive or negative about this gimbal. Now, I'm new to the gimbal world. I've never used a gimbal prior to this one. Now, if you're looking for like the specs and all that crazy stuff, this is not gonna be that video. I'm gonna tell you about my real life world experience using this gimbal. Basically, if you're a beginner, how hard is this gimbal to fully understand? Now, my biggest struggle when using this gimbal is trying to make sure that I get that eye contact just right. Now it does have some ports here in the back that you can plug it in, and then you plug this cord into your camera, and that gives the gimbal control over your camera so it can help do some face tracking. I'll be honest with you, it does struggle just a little bit with wide sweeping pans. So as you're trying to do that panning thing where you get that really blurry background, it does struggle with that a little bit. You do have to go pretty slow, but I can tell you, you slow down footage from 120 frames per second and it's gonna look pretty nice on your computer. Now, one of the downsides that I found when balancing the gimbal, I use a Rode Video Micro. What happens is when you get the camera on here, it does, when you're trying to balance it, bang onto the back of here. So it can make it a little bit tough to balance if you're using a microphone. My recommendation would be picking up something like the Rode Wireless Go or some sort of wireless system that's really small and compact. That Rode Wireless Go is gonna do a fantastic job. It's gonna just sit a little bit on top of the camera and you're not gonna have to worry about it banging into the back of the gimbal as you're trying to balance it. Now, this gimbal does give you this nice wood paneling here on the side, so it's not hard to grip, and the tripod feet do turn into an extra stability point so you can get 2 hands on this gimbal. It also comes with an attachment out here on the side so you can get those underslung modes when you're using this gimbal. The downside is that it fixes on with solid screws, so releasing it, getting it on and off can take a little bit of work. Now, sometimes if you're holding it and you got that other handle up here, it gives you that extra bit of stability. What I found is that the gimbal does a great job stabilizing the footage, but the But the more stable that you are when holding the gimbal, the better it's gonna be. So if you're using a gimbal, what I learned is that you can't really stomp around because that's gonna make the footage shaky. The gimbal can do only so much, and it can really smooth out some of the footage. So what you're gonna wanna do is really bend your knees and really try and be as smooth as possible on your end, and that's gonna help. Now this thing does do Inception Mode, which is pretty cool. I can't see much of a use for it unless maybe you're shooting like a music video or something like that. If you're just out filming, maybe you're looking to film your kids running around, playing sports or something like that, and you want to be on the sidelines, so to speak, running around, then I think the gimbal will do a great job. It does have this wheel on the side. It does help control the tilting up and down of the lens. It's also on the back here. Got a joystick that you can do up and down and left and right, so you can do the same thing. This does it much faster. I can tell you that the menu system was a little confusing at first. Now, I have used this thing in selfie mode, and I think selfie mode, it does a great job. So, you know, you can hold it out there pretty far. I would recommend, if you're gonna do the selfie mode, use the tripod stand and kind of put your hand in between tripod stand and the regular handle, and you can do a great job of really vlogging with this thing. I can tell you, it comes in at 2.5 pounds, so it's pretty heavy. It can support a pretty decent amount of weight, so it does a great job with that. You'll want to make sure you balance it, because otherwise you're going to burn up your battery life. Speaking of battery life, 14 hours. You get 14 hours of battery life with this thing, so you can really run and gun for a long period of time, all day. Downside is no removable battery. You're gonna have to charge this thing, make sure it's fully charged before you go out and use it, especially if you're gonna do an all-day shoot. It does have a USB-C charging port, so if you have a USB-C power brick, get a nice long cord and you can run that all the way down to the power brick, so you could put that power brick in your pocket or something of that nature, and you could use this thing while it's charging. Now, maybe I would have sped up my learning process had I watched a couple videos and tried to learn a little bit more about the gimbal, but I like to grab things and just start using them. Figure it out as I go. I feel like that's the easiest way for me to learn. Reading a manual and doing all that stuff, that can be a little cumbersome. And once you get this thing balanced, you're definitely gonna want to calibrate it to the camera. So it makes those fine little adjustments to balance the camera out. So make sure you definitely do that. Also, a couple other cool things that this thing can do. It can do time lapse. So it could do like if you're trying to do the night sky or something like that, it could do a nice time lapse for you. Just set it down on the ground, and however you want to balance it or set it up, you can do a nice time lapse there. So all in all, I think it's a pretty nice gimbal. I think it's pretty easy to use once you get the hang of it. The downside is, like I said, sometimes when you're filming other people, it's tough to keep them in the screen. Now, I use the Sony a6400, and that's got a flip up screen. I'd like to try this thing when I get the Sony a7S III. Maybe I can give you my thoughts after I get my hands on the Sony a7S III. That's got the flip out to the side screen, and I think that would be a lot easier, because as you can see, I mean, you got your motors and all that, and if your screen is flipped out here, then you're kind of monitoring over here while the gimbal's doing all the work over here. Plus you can do like top-down shots and under shots. So that fully articulating screen on that Sony a7S III is definitely gonna make it a lot better for Sony and gimbal users. I think it's gonna really up our game when it comes to video work. So now it's time for my newest segment, which is reading your comments from previous videos. Andrea Allers commented on my white balance video that I did for the Sony a6400. Wish I would have learned this 10 years ago. Would have saved me so much work in post. I 100% agree. Setting the right white balance is super important. So if you haven't seen how to set white balance on a Sony camera, I did a video with my Sony a6400. I'll link that up in the cards above. Now the next comment comes from my small rig video for the a7 III. Now that's the small rig 2020 version. This comes from Callie and Jordan Squad. Another amazing video, Brian. With the twins, it has been difficult, but I want to get a Sony camera for sure. Yeah, Sony cameras do an amazing job, but if you're open to all camera lines, you know, pick the camera that works best for you, but I prefer Sony. But yeah, absolutely, Sony does a great job with their cameras. That's why I love and highly recommend them. So there you go. There's the most recent comments that I've received. If you want to be featured in an upcoming video, make sure you leave a comment about the Feiyutech AK2000s down below. Or if you have any questions regarding any camera settings, anything like that, feel free to leave those down in the below. If you want to learn more about the Feiyutech AK2000s, I'll go ahead, leave links down in the description below. Before you leave, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Brian, out.